I have a Claude Code routine that sends me reading assignments on Slack every morning. I'm quite pleased with it, and I'm going to show you how I built it. Now, the reason that I built it is I have blocked 1 hour at the beginning of every workday for reading. The problem I've been facing, though, is if I very innocently open my laptop before I start reading, I get just sucked into, I had this idea that I want to test out, and I'll just send a quick prompt to Claude, or I'll just do this little tweak of my website and then I'll read, or I'll just answer this email and then I'll read. And before I know it, it's 10 a.m., 3 hours have passed, and I think, okay, well, there goes my reading slot. Then I actually had an agent for a while that scans different sources online that I want to stay up to date on, but don't necessarily have the time to browse myself. And it has been creating a reading list in my Obsidian vault. But again, that requires I open my laptop, and that's when the chaos starts. So that's why I wanted to build a routine where I would get a notification on my phone, so I can just sit with my cup of coffee, open the notification, and read what captures me. So if you're also interested in setting up some kind of routine that can run even if your laptop is closed and that can ping you on Slack, this is the right tutorial for you. I have actually tried 3 different versions of this workflow. The first one was with Slack MCP server, which is super easy to set up, but Claude is only able to post on Slack as me because it's authenticated in my account, which means I don't get notifications. And for me, that was a non-starter. It might be a good option if you have a team and you want other people in the team to get notified about something. The second version I built was through Claude's managed agents feature, and that actually worked super well. The catch is that it doesn't use your Claude subscription. It uses API credits, which means you'll be paying extra, let's say, on the side, especially if you have a subscription. So for me, the routines plus a bot on Slack is the sweet spot for my setup. The way it is set up is I have a routine that runs on a schedule, even when my laptop is off. And I have it set to run every morning at 6:30 and spins up an agent that goes and checks the sources. And it comes with the top 3 recommendations for what I should read. It then saves the recommendations into my Obsidian vault. Then it sends a message in a specific channel I have in Slack through a Slack bot. And I help knowledge workers build workflows exactly like this one. So if this is the type of thing you want, either for yourself or for your team, check out the description. You can find a link to schedule a free call with me, and you can also sign up for my free newsletter. All right, so here's what I'm gonna work through in this tutorial. We're gonna start with setting up a GitHub repository. The reason that these Claude routines can work when your computer is off is because they're working with your files in GitHub and not on the local files. Then we're going to create the routine, and then we're going to set up a custom environment that's going to allow the agent that spins up with the routine to reach Slack. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the Slack bot itself. And then once we get through all of that, the routine will be ready to go, and you'll be also ready to create your own. I also have an AI onboarding doc that you can take from the description that you can just copy paste into your AI assistant that can help you through this entire process for your specific use case. And if you already have set up GitHub and that you've run some routines in Claude, you can actually just skip to this part 3 where we start to set up the environment and the Slack bot. Okay, so we have to set up a GitHub repository. And honestly, the fastest way to do it is just to ask Claude to do it for you. I will also link in the description a guide on how to do it yourself, or if you just want to get a bit more background information on it before you just ask Claude to do it. But I'll show you here. What I've done is I've spun Claude up in this folder on my desktop that I'm using for this demo. So you want to get Claude up in whatever folder that either you want it to have access to because there's some background information that it needs to complete the routine, or if you want to write the results in a folder. I'm going to use a speech to text here. Help me set up a GitHub repository for this project. Okay, and as you can see, it has a few questions for me. What it's asking for permission for now is to check whether I have the GitHub CLI installed. In other words, if I have that installed, then Claude will be able to set this up for me through the command line interface. I'm going to let it check. And I do have it installed. And if you don't already have it installed, you can also ask Claude to help you walk through the install. And you'll have to create a GitHub account and you'll have to authenticate to be able to let Claude interact with it. And then, yes, it's rightfully asking what the heck do you want to do with it? This folder's empty. Use the default name, make it private. And this is going to be a repository where I store reading digest. Let's see what it does with that. Yeah, it's asking for permission here again to initiate a repository. I'm just going to give it permission this time. All right, and it took a pretty good stab at what this repository might be used for. It even made a little template, or it's creating a README. I think it's going to create a template now as well. And of course, you should correct it based on what it is you want. Right now, I'm just going to go with whatever it thinks is best. And I'm going to give it permission to edit everything during this session. Okay, so it's created everything now locally, and now it wants to create this repository on GitHub and push everything that it's made up into it. And now it's all done. Because the let's see what it does accidentally slipped into the speech to text, it of course is responding to that. I can see that it has kind of guessed what this repository is actually for. That it's going to be a scheduled look routine that generates digest. And you know, this wasn't exactly part of my tutorial plan, but let's roll with this. I'm going to ask it to structure this based on this use case. Yeah, actually, you are correct. I'm filming a YouTube tutorial right now to show how to set up a Claude Code routine that scans approved online sources and posts to Slack reading recommendations every morning and then also commits them here. Will you update the structure of this repository to accommodate it? All right, so Claude has just gone off. Let's have a look at what it did before I accept this commit. So it updated the README to have a bit more precise description of what this is for. It made a nice structure here. It created a file that is just to store which sites that I wanted to fetch from. This might even be better than the one I have live, because the one I have live right now, the sites are just listed in the prompt. And then it's also written the prompt here locally, which is a nice touch. The reason I like it is that you can make edits in that file. You can version control that file, and so you have a single source of truth. Whereas if you're editing a prompt directly in the routine, you don't have the same versioning capability. So that's nice. And it looks like it already pre-populated a few sources, and it's already written the prompt. So I'm just going to accept this, and we can take a closer look at it after we set up the routine. All right, so I like how it's flagging before you roll tape. Well, we are rolling Claude, thanks. So let's then take the work that Claude has done and set this up in a routine. To configure a routine, you need to go to Claude.ai/code/routines, and you'll see this dashboard. And we're going to make a brand new routine up here. And we can call it Daily Reading Digest. And here is where you're putting in the prompt. And this is one that Claude already wrote for us. So we will just copy paste it in like so. So I think overall the prompt looks pretty good. It gives the instructions fairly clearly. You need to read the sources, post into Slack, and commit the digest itself. It gives a format. I think we're going to have to add some more instructions in terms of posting to Slack, but we will come back and add those in once we've got the Slack bot up and running. Yes, and then we're going to select a trigger. This one will be daily. 9 sounds fine to me. You can also, all the different connectors that you can use in Claude and Claude Code, you can also connect them here. In this case, I'm not going to connect the Slack connector. As I said in the intro, if you use a Slack connector, it is posting to Slack as you, which means you won't get a notification. This depends on your use case. If I want the notification, I'm not going to use the Slack MCP connector. And then you also want to remember you have to select a GitHub repository for it to use. So I'll find the one that we just made, routine Slack demo. So the agent that spins up when this routine activates is going to have access to that repository. These are all the basics for setting up a routine. You can, of course, also choose the model that you want it to run with. And the next part we're going to do is where you can really expand the capabilities of a routine, and that is by setting up a new environment. First, just a little bit about what are these cloud environments. We're going to configure an environment that this routine is going to use that's going to set some constraints on what's possible. So in this case, I have a cloud environment configured that's specifically for different types of digests that I want to post to Slack. The information that it contains that is unique to this environment is that it will pass a Slack bot token. So this allows it to pass messages as a bot in my Slack workspace that I just call Claude. Then what it also does is it does a bit of security, right? You can define what can come in and come out of this environment that the routine is operating with. Anthropic does have a default environment that has a trusted allow list, but if something you need to interact with for your routine is not on that list, which Slack is not, you can add that domain to the allowed list specifically for this environment, which means anything that has the digest notifier environment is going to have access to Slack. But anything with a different environment or the default environment is not going to have that access. This goes both for incoming and outgoing communication from this little container, let's call it. All right, with that in mind, we want to set up an environment that allows this agent to reach Slack. So I actually already set one up, this digest notifier environment that I use for all the routines where I want it to post to Slack. Let me just show you how I have configured that environment. All right, so this is what my environment configuration looks like. I have, of course, X'd out my Slack bot token. I gave it this name. I gave it custom network access, and then I did slack.com as an allowed domain. So if we want to create a brand new one, we would do add environment. We would give it a name, digest, let's say. And then here we have different options for what can be accessed inside of this cloud environment. The default is this trusted level where Anthropic has a list of trusted domains, as I say, verified sources that the agent can have access to. You can also block entirely. You can live in YOLO mode and go full. This is not one that I really would recommend at all, but that's an option. should you choose to take it. And what I have done with, I think, all of my routines is this custom. And if you want to know precisely what is in the list of trusted domains, you can click here on the access levels. And if you scroll down, you get a default allowed domains. So you can see everything that will be available when you use the trusted network access option. All right, so I have saved this routine. We have now set up our Git repository and we've set up the basic routine. What we're missing now is the connection to Slack. So what we need to do is we need to create an app in your Slack workspace that Claude Code can use to ping you. So to do that, we want to go to api.slack.com/apps and sign in. And as you can see, I have already a Claude app, but to make your new app, you're just going to click Create New App. And we will make this from scratch. You give it a name. I'm just going to call it Claude 2. You select the workspace that you want it in. And once you hit create, the screen you're going to land on is going to show you some client secrets and keys and things like that that you don't want to share with anyone. And I certainly don't want to share on a YouTube tutorial. So I've just scrolled down, because if you scroll down a little bit, you can also configure how this app looks. So you can upload an icon for it, handle the colors, and write a little description. What I actually did was I told Claude Code that I was making an app for it in Slack, and I asked it to create its own app icon, and it did it, and I uploaded that. That's just a minor detail. What we want to do is we want to configure what type of permissions this app has inside the Slack workspace. So I have gone to the OAuth and permissions tab, and I'm going to scroll down to scopes. This is what determines what capabilities and permissions it has within your workspace. So we are going to add some bot token scopes. Since this is a digest that we wanted to write into a channel, it is going to need to be able to post messages. Besides posting messages, it's also going to need to read what is already in the channel that it is in, so it can see the past digest. This is not, I guess, a necessity, but to me it just feels more natural. So it's up to you. I'm going to add the ability to see channel history and read channels. And it can also be nice. I actually do have a routine where it's not like I can't like live chat with Claude inside of Slack. I also have no use for that at the moment, but I do have a routine where I will respond to Claude in a channel and it will pick it up later. In that use case, it's nice that it can, of course, read and see the history in a channel. So once you have given it these capabilities, you're going to install it so to make it available in your workspace. And you do that here. You can install it to your workspace. And once you click to install this, it's going to give you a token. And you're going to need to copy that token and use it in the routine. And that's what I'm going to show you next. All right, I've got my screenshot out again of what my cloud environment configuration looks like. And I'm going to show you the final two things that you have to modify in your environment to get this up and running with Slack. The first thing you want to do is you want to add slack.com as an allowed domain. That way it can send calls out to Slack to post the messages. And the second thing you want to do is you want to add your Slack bot token here, the one that was generated when you published your bot to your workspace. It is worth having a look at this warning in the environment variables. So anything that you put here is visible to anyone using this environment, which means if you're working in a team and you are sharing this environment, everyone in the team will have access to this token. So once we've got the cloud environment configured and we have our token, we are just about ready to let this routine loose. The last thing we have to do is just make a few tweaks to the prompt to make sure that Claude Code knows what to do with that token. One thing you probably want to do is be explicit in the prompt that the agent should post to Slack using the token in the environment variables. So here, this is the live routine I have running where I've been explicit in the prompt that it's going to notify using the web API, because otherwise it's going to naturally try to find an MCP server, and it probably will give up if it doesn't see a Slack connector. But here you can explicitly say, use this token, use the web API, and you can be even more explicit in the prompt about how to use the Slack bot token and in which format to send the API request, and you can get Claude to help you set that up based on Slack's documentation. The other note is about the Git repository. So by default, the routine is going to create a new feature branch in your GitHub repository and work on that, which means if you want to get the changes, you're going to need to do some branch merging. That's might be like exactly the right workflow for you. However, if you, like me, am working alone in the repository, have a fairly limited scope for this routine, and even more so if you have a completely separate folder, like I showed in the demo, you can scroll down here to permissions and you can activate this allow unrestricted branch pushes. So that means it can push to any branch, meaning it can push directly to the main branch so that you get the updates once it's finished without having to merge. You'll just have to pull the changes. And then you can be explicit in the prompt as well that it should work directly on the main branch. Once you get it set up, you can run it right away. You don't have to wait for the schedule to trigger it. Then you can confirm that everything is working smoothly, that it's posting to Slack, that it's saving in the right place in your local files. And you can see a history of all the runs here at the bottom as well. You can check in on each run, and it opens essentially like an instance of Claude that you can even keep chatting with. If there was an error or something, you can actually have Claude help troubleshoot it right inside of the routine. So, all right, that does it. We have set up a GitHub repository. We created a Claude Code routine, set up a custom environment for this routine to use, got our Slack bot up and running, and you are ready to get Claude Code to send you Slack messages. Remember to grab the onboarding docs for your AI in the description. That way you can get Claude to handhold you even more through this process. And let me know if you have any comments or questions.